Is that going to be all right there?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you can mess with that however you want.
Yeah, whatever works best for you. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah, so I appreciate you coming back on, brother.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. So
Yeah. The reason why I wanted to have you on is because I'm just super interested in your kind of ability, at least from a outsider looking in, the ability to manage a very stressful life and still have a focus on taking care of your health and your family's health and raising a family and having young boys.
Yeah.
And I just find that super interesting. And it's really something that I've been trying to kind of lean into over the last year is, I look to people that I admire and say to myself, like, hey, man, like, what are they doing to put all of these things into a greater focus and a lifestyle to stay healthy, stay fit, to be the kind of parent that raises, strong young men, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I don't even know where to start, really. I do have some, I put my phone on silent, but I do have some questions that Betsy wanted me to make sure I asked.
Oh, yeah, that's no problem.
And I've got a little deal here. I want to pull up some of the questions, but why don't we start with it's kind of a weird place to start, but I'm super interested in it, is your home gym.
Yeah.
Like, when did that come about, and why did you decide to build something so awesome at your house?
Well, it's been a bit of an evolution. We started, I think, with like a lot of people did during COVID, right? So we went to the gym quite a bit. We had a dean at that time, and so when COVID hit, you couldn't go to the gym anymore. And so my wife, and again, I'm going to reference my wife a lot in this,
Sure,
because that's really where I got started in this is with her interest in it. Yeah. So we put some stuff in our basement, and that was kind of our plan. We had a small unfinished portion of our basement, and our plan was to make that like our home gym. And then with the ceiling clearance, and you start looking at squat racks and putting equipment in there, getting it down the stairs and through the doors, you're like, man, this isn't working. So the other thing that played into that was kind of what you're talking about with the family. So when you have young kids, you have to leave home is a lot more difficult to be consistent, and which is the main goal, is to stay consistent with whatever you're doing. So,
What's up, guys? Welcome to the James Boudreaux podcast, where I sit down with people from all walks of life to talk about their stories, experiences, and ideas. This podcast is brought to you by Watson Motors, the official studio sponsor. If you're in need of a Jeep, Ram, or Dodge, or whatever, these guys have you covered with great deals and even better service. So hit them up in Manistee, Benzie, or Ludington, or check them out online at watsonmotors.com. Listen, support the people that support the show. Now let's get into it. This episode is brought to you by Brandon Ball, broker-owner of Dwelling Realty, Keller Williams, Northern Michigan. Are you looking to sell your home? Then look no further. When you list your home with Brandon Ball, you'll get a trusted advisor who will guide you through the entire selling process. With extensive knowledge of the local market, he'll help price your home competitively to attract the right buyers. And with proven marketed strategies, your home will be seen by the most qualified of buyers. With 17 years in the business, you'll have someone experienced who's on your side. Contact Brandon today to get started selling your home. 231-690-4981. That's 231-690-4981. Or Brandon at dwellingrealty.com.
With my wife's interest in it, she does training and that sort of thing, and with her interest in powerlifting and everything else, we just kind of said, hey, what is it going to look like if we put something here at the house? It'll be convenient. We really wanted to promote a healthy lifestyle for our kids. I think when we go in the gym, our kids come out there a lot of times with us. So although they're not at the age where they're really lifting weights or doing anything like that at this point, they see us out there, and they see us being active and doing that kind of stuff, and you see little glimpses of their interest in it, and so I think that's really cool. But so building the gym was an evolution. During the COVID times, we were going to, a lot of gyms were shutting down, so we go pick stuff up at auctions and kind of piecemealed some equipment together. I went down to a Catholic school in Grand Rapids who was getting new squat racks and disassembled the whole thing myself and hauled it back one night after work. So it was just an evolution. And again, it's the problem is it's not cheap. None of that stuff is gym equipment and that sort of thing is cheap. But obviously something we're really proud of and something really happy to have at the house because of the convenience and be able to share that with our kids. So.
I'll tell you what, dude, you look fucking jacked. And I obviously I follow some of your stuff online when you guys post about your workouts and stuff, and I'm always like, man, look at this fucking guy. Cool. The last time, you don't look anything. You look way stronger and way more like aesthetically built than you were the first time you were on the podcast.
Yeah.
So like, walk me through what you're doing, bro. Like, what is your just looking at his guns.
I always get so like it makes me really uncomfortable when people talk like that or say that kind of stuff. And it's I think for me, I work out Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and then a lot of times Sunday we'll do some accessory stuff. So 4 to 5 times a week.
Okay.
It's nothing crazy. I think I told you when we were trying to schedule this. I don't go out in the gym until my kids go to bed.
Right. Which is way past my bedtime.
Yeah. Well, and that's all right. I think consistency and being able to make that time is the most difficult part. I used to try to work out right after work, and if I went out in the gym at 4:30 when I got home from work, then I was missing an hour and 20 minutes, hour and a half with my kids before they went to bed. So, I kind of transitioned to just doing it after they went to bed, just so that I could make sure I made that time for them. Which is obviously my number one priority, and then still be able to do it. But the hardest part is consistency, and I think that's where a lot of people fall off. Everybody's so busy, and there's so much going on for everybody in their lives, and just being able to put that time. People talk about self-care and that sort of thing is really important for me. Not just for my health and all that kind of stuff. We can get into that, but my sanity. The stress in law enforcement, it's not just my position, but anybody who has stress in their life. There's a lot of different ways people try to find outlets for that. For me, going in the gym is a way for me to kind of reset and kind of forget about some of the stuff that's going on and be able to focus on just doing something for myself. And, as far as, why we do it, I think for anybody who works out or takes care of themselves, everybody likes to look good, right? And I think whether you look at people who are using GLP-1s or people who are falling into the latest fad diet or people who are working out, there's a piece of you that wants to look good. Everybody feel, you feel good when you look good. But the health aspect of it, the average age lifespan for people in this country is 78 years old.
Yeah.
In law enforcement, it's 66. I'm 40 years old. I would really love to have more than 26 more years with my kids.
Roger that.
And for cardiac events, it's the same thing. The average age for a cardiac event, I think, is like 69 years old in this country. For law enforcement, it's like 49. So again, when I started looking at some of those statistics going, hey, 49, that's 9 years. I would love to be able to see my youngest get out of high school and do that kind of stuff. So again, I kind of got off topic of what your question was.
I think we're tracking on the same page there. I look at it the exact same way you do. I think it's that for me now. I'll be turning 47 this summer. So if you look at like 78, 33 more summers. Yeah. 33 more Christmases. 30, that's not a big number, dude.
It's not.
And I look at that and I think to myself, okay, like I want to be the healthiest possible version of myself 33 years from now.
Yeah.
40 years from now. Like, how can I ensure that I'm going to do that? And, obviously having muscle mass is going to improve that and lengthen it. But, are you doing anything with like cardio, or is it just lifting right now?
Yeah. So I'm not a fan of cardio. I've always struggled with that for years. But I do try to do some cardio, and it's not. I don't do any like steady state stuff, so I'm not running 5 miles or anything like that. But just something to get the heart rate up. We have a fan bike in the gym, so
Nice. Those are nice.
Yeah, so you do alternating, like that steady cycling, and then you kick it up a notch for 10, 15 seconds every minute or whatever it is to increase the heart rate. I'm not as consistent with my cardio as I'd love to be, just because it's not something I super enjoy, but it's definitely something that's important. And you can do that through compound lifts too. So, if you're doing deadlifts and things like that, it does, there's a little bit of a cardio aspect to that. But my wife's always on me. She's like, you gotta do more cardio, because that heart health is really important as
Like
well.
Sam Sulik would say, I know you're not doing your cardio.
Yeah, exactly.
I know you're not doing it. What's the diet look like? Because I'm interested, because I'm changing on my end. So
Yeah.
I'm interested to see like vitamin intake, diet, and how does that play through with, I mean, obviously your boys are still young, so
Yeah.
I mean, they don't really get much of a choice, but how does that look for, as you're doing this with your family?
Yeah. So if you come to our house on a Sunday, that is like meal prep day. So every day we eat basically the same things. And that's another hard part, especially if your partner or your spouse or whoever you're with isn't kind of on that same page. For breakfast for me is typically 3 eggs, egg whites, cottage cheese mixed in with it. Everything is really centered around high protein. And again, I feel like I have a little bit of imposter syndrome here, a bit, if you're familiar with that concept, because
Yep.
all this stuff is stuff that I've learned from my wife through everything that she's done. But everything is really high protein focused. I always used to joke with my wife when we first started doing this. She'd make something, and I go, "Oh, it tastes just like like regular pasta, just not as good." That was kind of our joke. But once you kind of get used to it and look at it, there's a lot of really good ways to make stuff that tastes good.
Yeah.
But make it high protein. So, 3 eggs, egg whites, cottage cheese, or we'll make a breakfast that my wife started doing when she did her prep for her bodybuilding show, which is 3 eggs, egg whites, half cup of oatmeal, mixed with some cinnamon, and then you just cook it like a pancake, so it's easy to take for work. But we'll make that for the entire week. And then for lunch, we cook 2 to 3 family packs of white meat chicken breast for the week. We do it up for our lunches for the entire week, so 10, 5 for me, 5 for her, with vegetables for lunch. And then at dinner time, we tend to eat a little bit more dirty at dinner time. So, but a lot of that stuff is still high protein. So if we do pasta, it's usually like Banza pasta,
Yep,
which is
familiar.
chickpea pasta, or the high protein pasta that you can buy. I made a cheese sauce the other night, and that was cottage cheese blended up with Parmesan and some grilled onions. And so everything that you do, just looking to try to keep it as high protein as you possibly can. As far as, I take a protein shake every day. I take creatine every day,
Yep.
Which has a lot of health benefits aside from just what you look at in the gym. But as far as that goes, a daily multivitamin, and aside from that,
Have you got any blood work done?
I have. And I'll be honest, I've been on TRT for a little bit. That's changed my life, not
So-
just in the gym, but for the way I feel, my energy level,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. So,
Yeah, people don't get it twisted. It still takes a lot of work in the gym to transform, and like the diet is in some cases the hardest part.
no doubt.
I'm on a clomiphene right now.
Okay. Yep.
So I got my blood work done through this company about a year ago, and it's all about like optimization.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm basically a vegetarian, we'll get back into that here in
Yeah.
a second, because we've started to incorporate a little bit of meat and why we're doing that. But got my blood work done. I've talked about this before on the podcast, so whatever, guys. And it was like 160 biomarkers. I mean, it was like the whole shot, something that I couldn't get from my regular doctor. No shade, but they just didn't want to do the extra. And it does come with a little bit of a cost. It's I think every time I get my blood work done, it's like $600, but that's kind of the going rate.
Yeah.
Anyways, when it came back, it was really interesting to see, because I was like, when I would get my blood work done through my primary care, testosterone was always kind of around the 450 to 550, depending on the test, right?
Yep.
Because one time it was 450, and then a year later it came back and it was 550, and I'm like,
And it depends on when you take that test too. When
100%.
Yeah.
And so everything, all my biomarkers came back really good, except for that testosterone level. And their thing was, I wasn't 100% sure that I wanted to go on TRT right away.
Yeah.
But with enclomiphene, again, I'm not a doctor, but this is what I'm receiving from the doctor that my telehealth doctor.
Yeah.
You'll see a spike, and then if you can come off of it, and it's not like TRT where, you've really got to fight to bring it back up to the level that it was with enclomiphene. It just goes back down. In some cases, it can stay up a little elevated if you come off of it, but it goes back down to the original level that you were at. So in any event, so I'm like, all right, I'll try it. And it's pill form non-injection, and within the first week and a half, just about a week, dude, when you talk about mental, like, first of all, my testosterone went to 1100.
Mm-hmm.
So 4 months later, I got another batch of blood work done, and I was 100% optimized, and my testosterone and I mean, I was just, and today, even today, I'm just like, I feel so good, dude. I feel so good. The aches and pains are like gone.
Yep.
My lifts are better. I just feel more clear. I can work longer.
Yep.
Yeah,
I was at just a hair above 300 when I got my blood work done.
That's kind of shocking to me.
You have to look at the correlation with high stress and its impact on testosterone too. When you look at veterans, military, law enforcement, people who are constantly functioning in that high stress environment, that has a negative effect on those levels as well. And I had been to my doctor twice, and both times I'm like, man, I have no energy. I'm always tired. And we did the test, and the range is so wide between what's acceptable. And I had a conversation with him, and I said, well, is this something that you would consider? And he's like, we just don't get enough training on it. He goes, there's clinics out there, there's people who specialize in this stuff. I don't know enough about it to prescribe it or to go down that road. So I kind of ventured off on my own with a clinic, and again, it's a cost, but just the way I feel, the energy to interact with my kids and be present and want to do the stuff that I want to do is tremendous. And again, it's not a secret. It helps you in the gym. There's no doubt about that. But again, it's changed my life. And there's other people that I know that have walked this same road, and I haven't heard one person say, man, I really regret doing
I hate feeling awesome.
Yeah. You just don't hear that. So
what company did you use, or clinic?
I use TRT Nation.
TRT Nation.
Yeah.
I use Blokes.
Okay.
And that was just like, we have been looking for trying to, take control of our own health.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just feels, again, I really like my doctor, but sometimes it just feels like we got to hurry up. And then when you have questions like you had, I said the same thing.
Yeah.
And before I even said it, when I was like, test for testosterone, the couple of years ago, and he was like, okay. And then the second time, I'm like, test for testosterone, he goes, I'm not putting you on TRT. And I'm like, well, I want you to check it again.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if it's going to help.
Yeah.
So I guess because I'm not on TRT, what is the protocol? Like, this is a forever, just keep going until the end.
Yeah, that's basically where I'm at. And again, it's that was just the choice that I made. I'm not a doctor, right? But we work with a doctor, and so that would be my protocols. I'll likely be on this forever, just because of the impact it does have. And I mean, that's something to know. Fertility-wise, there's some impacts from TRT, and so obviously we don't want any more kids. We're happy with our 2 boys, and so that wasn't a concern for me. But I mean, I encourage people, if you're going to walk down that road, to talk to your doctor, talk to somebody you trust, whatever clinic that is. I know there's a place in Traverse City I've heard people have gone to where there's an actual physical doctor you talk to rather than doing telehealth, because some people are uncomfortable with that. So it's really a personal choice.
So when you had your blood work done, was it more of like this big panel, or was it just?
Yeah, it's your normal CBC stuff, and
Yeah.
along with testosterone, free testosterone, estrogen, all the different markers that they look at for TRT. It's really TRT Nation's a little bit more. It's not quite as in depth as I think, because I watched your other podcast with Dan, and it's not quite as in depth as the blood work that you got.
Yeah, that guy
so.
needs to get on some blood work.
Yeah.
I've told him that many times. Like, you don't just be swallowing stuff and.
Yeah, it's again, but I mean, it's your body, right? So people make their own choices, but I think it's really important that you are monitoring yourself no matter what you're doing. Even that's just not taking anything like this, right? Just making sure you understand what's going on with your body. And I think a lot of times people ignore things, and you hear that all the time. Well, like, I haven't felt good for 3 days. I've had indigestion for 3 days, and then you end up having realizing you're having a heart attack, or and I think part of that is because it is sometimes difficult to get into see a doctor or something, and people, well, I don't feel like I need to go to the ER or that sort of thing. But you really got to listen to your body, because if you wake up and something's different, it's probably important that you figure out what that is. So.
Yeah, 100%. And so to speak to that, listening to your body. So I'll just make this quick, because I've talked about this ad nauseum on the podcast. I got rheumatoid arthritis years ago, and I didn't want to take medication that I was going to have to have my liver and kidneys checked every couple of months. I'm like, that's wild to me. There's got to be another way, yada yada.
Yeah.
So we did a complete elimination diet, and Betsy had always kind of dabbled in being a vegetarian, and did some vegan diet for a while, and just to kind of clean up her own inflammation.
Yep.
So she said to me, why don't we just try eliminating, go vegan and see what happens. And it was remarkable. Elimination diet, when you take out all the bullshit anyways. So even if you are a meat and potatoes person, when you eliminate potatoes and carbohydrates and all that, you're just eating meat, it's the same thing. So the inflammation went away. I haven't had a flare up in years. And then over the course of the last couple years, we brought back in eggs. Well, number one, because we have our youngest is 9, but when she was 6 or 7, it's like, hey, we can't force this little one to eat the way we eat, because she needs all the nutrients.
Right.
So, let's make sure she's getting eggs, give her a little bit of meat, give her just a standard, really good diet. And so then in the last 6 months or so, Betsy and I have been talking, well, maybe we should incorporate more meat. Because even the older kids, when the older kids come over for Sunday dinner, they're forced to eat what we eat. And it's usually kind of beans again?
Right.
So so we've been talking about it. And then one of the things we want to do with our youngest is start getting her interested in cooking and getting in the kitchen and stuff like that. So instead of saying, these are your choices, we said to her, what do you want to make? And the first thing she said 2 weeks ago was, I want to make hamburgers. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to say no if that's what you want to do. So she goes grocery shopping with me on Sunday. So we went to the store, and I got an organic, grass-fed, pasture-raised beef. It was 8 ounces, and it was $9. And I go, it's been a minute since your boys bought meat. So we bought it, and I just made 4 patties. And I'm telling you, dude, I mean, they were this big, because it was just 8 ounces. So I made 1 for each of the kids and 1 for Betsy and I to split. And I cooked it. This thing was not medium rare. I'm like, if it's our first go in a while, it's been 6 years.
Right.
I'm cooking this thing all the way through. And, the kids enjoyed it. It was definitely like an overcooked burger.
Right.
We cut it in half. Betsy had her half. I had mine. And Mary finished everything except she only ate half of her burger. So I said, I'll take it. It tasted pretty good, Dude, the next day, your boy was shitting through a screen all day long. Betsy was dealing with stomach pains.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, yeah, it's been a long time. We really got to microdose this.
Yep.
But, I didn't have, and it wasn't a lot of meat, so, I didn't feel a flare-up or anything. And then this past Sunday, Mary, what are you making for dinner? I want to make chicken tacos. So we made chicken tacos, and I had 1 taco. I had a pretty decent amount of shredded chicken in it. I did put very little in Betsy's, but I felt fine. So I think now the kids are like, so like, are we going to do this?
Yeah,
all,
is this a
they're
normal thing
like
now?
all in. So we're kind of, like I said, slowly kind of micro dosing it in. But there's pros and cons. But definitely for me, like I've been trying to gain more weight over the last year or so. So like I'm trying to eat as much protein as I can, but I'm not eating meat. So I mean, I was eating like anywhere from 8 to 12 eggs a day.
Yeah.
I wake up in the morning, 3 or 4 hard-boiled eggs before I go to the gym, and then I'm eating it and it's just like, man, I can only eat so much fucking.
Yeah, it's a lot of eggs.
It's a lot of eggs.
And now, with the price of eggs, that's a whole other story, too, when you start the availability and the price of stuff like that. And the one thing about eating healthy, and which is so frustrating for my wife and I, is it's expensive. And so when you look at the processed stuff, a lot of the junk that's out there, it's cheaper, right? And so it's easy to do that.
I'll say this, though, is it's I would say invest in your food, because you don't want to have to be paying for your health later.
Right, absolutely.
And I say that all the time. Yeah, I get that. It's expensive to buy the organic whole foods, right? But do you want to spend thousands of dollars on trying to get your health back in order when you're in your 70s, 60s, 50s? I think the investment is
100%.
is worth it.
100%.
And you can. I mean, I know some people might get upset, but you can budget that. Just maybe start by cutting out all the processed snacking foods and sugary drinks, and get rid of that stuff, and just drink water. And
that's another thing people don't do enough of, is drink water.
Yeah.
So again, it's. Yeah, you pay for that and getting up from your desk, or getting up from your couch every 45 minutes to use the bathroom or whatever it is when you're really pounding the water. But it's so important to stay hydrated, and I think that people are like, I don't drink water. And I'm like, what? It's so essential to everything that's going on in your body. You really need to do that. But again, it's part of the we pack we do our lunches for the week, and I used to eat out all the time like that. And obviously now it's expensive, just like everything else. The price of that is going up. But the impact of having people say, "Hey, you want to go grab lunch?" And I'm like, man, I brought my lunch with me. So you miss out on that social aspect a little bit, which sometimes is unfortunate. But I think it really just helps packing that every day, because you're like, well, I don't want to waste it. I brought it for this. I have it. And so that meal prep portion of it takes a little time. Like I said, our Sunday is cleaning the house and prepping for the week. So it's a little bit of time, but again, to invest in your health and making sure that you have all that set up to try to avoid some of those easy things to fall into, like going out for lunch every day is a big deal. So.
How do you look to, like, in the years to come, as your boys are getting older, trying to incorporate some of this healthy lifestyle with them? And this is coming from a guy who, I've got 2 older children, and divorced from their mother. Time was split, and it was just a different time in my life.
Yep.
It's wild for me to think of, but I've really come to, like, maybe accept the fact that I'm different today than I was back then.
Yeah.
So raising my youngest is much different than raising my older 2.
Yeah.
Although I'm constantly the guy like, well, I'm getting up, I'm going to the gym, I'm going downstairs, jumping on the treadmill or the stationary bike, like, who wants to get after it with me? And they don't.
Yeah.
But, I mean, because they're 21 and 19 now,
right.
And they're doing their own things, and they're going to figure it out. I mean, they've talked about maybe getting a gym membership and kind of moving forward with that. But I hate to say things like, I feel like that aspect I failed at. But again, I wasn't like, I was super athletic in high school, and then I wasn't.
Yeah.
And then I was super athletic when I was in the military, and then I wasn't.
Yeah.
And I don't know where the spark came. I know you don't do cardio, but at some point I started just like running. And I was running back when you didn't have a watch to track any of this shit. I didn't know how far I was going, right. And then got into a 5K, yada, yada, yada. And then, everything's kind of changed since then. But, like, we are really cognizant at home. Like, this is, like, our refrigerator. There's no snacking in our house. We don't have any of that shit lying around.
Yep.
Like, if you're hungry, there's a ton of fruit over there. We've got grapes in the refrigerator, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, fill up on that stuff.
Yeah.
And, my youngest is very much like, I'll just eat a banana, I'm good, or whatever. My older two are constantly like, we gotta go to fucking Wendy's before dinner tonight.
Right. No, I think that's part of it, and again, that goes back to that partnership with in the family of kind of all trying to be on the same page as much as you can. Because I'm here to tell you, I'm that guy that if you put a pizza in front of me or you put chicken breast, I'm like, if nobody's watching, I'm eating the pizza.
Yeah.
Like that's just kind of how I operate. So having somebody else to hold you accountable is really good, whether that's your spouse or a gym partner or whatever it is, to kind of check in on each other and be like, hey, my wife will be like, where did these go? The few little snacky things that we do have in the house, and I'm like, ooh, yeah, I had a moment of weakness. Really sorry about that. But we don't have that kind of stuff in our house, like you said. So just to open the cupboard and not see, donuts or cookies and that sort of thing, I think makes it easier to make those choices. And I don't want people to think our kids don't enjoy stuff at our house. Like we have, stuff that necessarily we don't eat, but we let the kids indulge in once in a while. But it's really all a lifestyle, and I think that's what's hard about it, is it from people who have lived a certain way for a long time to start down that new path, because that's what I did, when my wife and I got together. I was used to living a certain way, and then you start seeing what she's doing and that it works and the results from that, and you're like, oh, that's okay. So you start getting into it, and then you kind of have to retrain yourself how to live. And it's just like you talked about your life being in kind of segments. Is kind of what it is, like different chapters. I'm much different now than I was 15 years ago. When I was on earlier in my career, I put like 50 pounds on, and I was on the drug team, in the car a lot, stopping at Wendy's and doing that kind of stuff. But like for our kids, we don't do a lot of screen time at our house. Good. We're very aware of that. So sometimes if we take them in the gym and they're restless, they stay in there with us, but that may be the time where they get a half hour on their tablet to play. But that stuff's not around during the day. And again, I don't want to sound preachy. Everybody does parenting different. Everybody has different outlooks. So it's not right or wrong. It's just this is what we do. During the summer, we are never inside the house. My wife lives in the sun, so we are always outside playing. Whether that's running around, hitting the t-ball, whatever it is, we're outside with our kids. We don't just sit in the house. And I think that's, again, I could go on a tangent about social media and how that has affected not just our kids, but our parents and everything else, and the general intolerance I feel like in our society that we have right now. I think that's all been bred from that, from that social media and being able to say whatever you want a lot of times without consequence and that sort of thing. I feel like that's really unfortunate, but we're really trying really hard with our kids to stay away from screens as much as we can. A lot of the research shows it's really bad for their brain development, and it's that instant gratification and constant stimulation like that doesn't allow them to use like their imaginations and get out there and play and that sort of thing. So we're really with our kids in our house, that's what we try to focus on.
Yeah, we're definitely, I can't really, once I'm very much, you're 18.
Yeah.
As soon as my oldest turned 18, or when my oldest daughter turned 18, I'm like, hey, the controls are kind of, but when you're in the house, it's different.
Oh yeah.
The rules still apply if you're gonna hang your hat here.
Right.
It's not a hostile, but I do agree that the screen time, the shit that sometimes, again, like I'm not parenting other parents, right? This is just how I live.
Right.
But like when your kid is constantly on a device, what they're consuming, you have no idea.
Yeah.
You have no idea. And I think that there's some legislation that might be trying to come through about like getting the phones out of schools.
Yep.
Which I'm all for. I've been saying that for years. Like we didn't give my oldest two phones until they were freshmen in high school, and that was only because of sports.
Yeah.
Like I gotta know when you're coming and when you're going, and it's weird to think that way now, being our age, because when we were kids, it was like, hey, I think the game gets over with at 8:30, so will you guys be outside to pick me up?
Yeah.
Or, practice is over at this time, I'm going to get a ride home.
Yeah.
I know what time dinner is. I never talked to my parents.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they were just kind of like, they would pick me up, they would drop me off, or I would get a ride home, it was fine. So it's weird now for me to be like, hey, you need a phone, because I don't know, I'm going to have to get a hold of you.
Yeah.
But I do think and maybe it's a tinfoil hat thing, but I like knowing where my kids are at.
Oh, no doubt.
You know what I'm saying?
Trust
like
me.
Helena, a couple of years ago, my oldest daughter got lost during a. Do you remember that? It was 2-3 years ago now.
Okay.
She was in Muskegon at a cross-country camp, and they were running trails in a...
I think I do remember this now that you're talking
and
about it.
they lost her, or she got lost, and then they couldn't find her, and it was like hours. And I called. Colzo was started working in Muskegon, so I called him, and I said, hey, man, they got 2 park rangers looking for my daughter. What's going on?
Yeah.
So, like, it was like the SWAT team came in. But a couple hours later, she just took the wrong way, got lost. She was in another county.
Oh, my goodness.
And some people found her, and then they kind of coached her on how to get back, and then the team found her. But, it was like, all right, we're putting Life 360 on these phones.
Yeah.
I want to know where everybody's at all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm trying to stalk, and they get that. I don't question what they're doing. I just want to know, like, if you need help, where you at.
Yeah.
And I think that's so odd today to have that feeling, because we were never tracked when we were kids.
Right.
Yeah,
it's a different world. There's no doubt about that. And again, it goes back to social media and the prevalence of cell phones, because when you were a kid, when I was a kid, we're kind of that age, and I always talk about this, how, like, I remember back in the day where if somebody wanted to talk to you, they called your house and had to leave a message, and you didn't know that they called until you got home. And I remember my brother, for work, got a bag phone in his truck, and I remember sitting in the driveway calling into the house thinking it was the coolest thing in the world that we could call from his truck into the house. And then cell phones started. So not only is that increased our ability to communicate with our kids and everything else, it's also given access to our kids to everybody in the world.
Yeah.
And we see this all the time on the law enforcement side. That's why you talk about Life 360 and being able to know what your kids are doing. If your kids have a cell phone and they're kids, like, you really need to pay attention to who they're talking to and what's going on. Some people are like, well, I want to give them their privacy and everything else, but what that leads into is there are predators out there, and there are people who want to take advantage of our kids, and we need to do everything we can as parents to protect them. So it's not like, the only thing you had to worry about when you were a kid was somebody in the neighborhood who might drive by and see you walking. Now, somebody from Oklahoma could be talking to your daughter, make a whole plan on how he's going to drive up here to Manistee. And we've seen this happen, not in Manistee necessarily, but in the country where they're communicating, there's a relationship that's established, and then somebody drives up and picks them up from another state, and they're gone for however long until we can track them down again. So it's that access to our kids that we've seen such an increase in predatory behavior, because access is so much easier, rather than having to drive by a playground if you wanted to make contact with a kid, or, trying to find somebody walking around the neighborhood. Now anybody can access children, whether it's through chat on Roblox. And our kids don't play video games like that, so I don't know all the ins and outs of chat rooms and all that kind of stuff, but we're seeing that access, whether it's Snapchat or the video games that they're playing. All that stuff has just really increased the ability for predators to access our kids. And
dude,
it's
Snapchat
scary.
is a wild one. I'm on Snapchat.
Mm-hmm.
My oldest daughter's on Snapchat, and that's the sole purpose for me, because that's how we talk to each other.
Yeah.
That's the most fucking wild thing. Like, I'll text, but I don't get a response on the text. It'll be through Snapchat. But anyways, we have a Snap streak going. So it's kind of like my
Where are
way
you at,
to...
out of curiosity?
It's like 600 and something.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we started that when she's like, I'm on Snapchat. I'm like, well, I'll get on it. And I'm like, what is this? Where it just keeps total. I said, we got to keep that going.
Yeah.
It's a good way for us to connect and stay together. But I don't like the map, and I don't like the fact that now Snapchat, you can pay some premium thing, and it's not much. It's like $1.99 or something like that.
Okay.
And then, are you familiar with this?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Mm.
And I was like, you're not doing that. And I know you're 19. But you're not doing that right now. So you pay for this, and I could get it wrong, but essentially what it is now you know exactly where you already kind of knew where your friends were at, but it pins kind of the friend stuff where, like, you can now see when 2 friends are together.
Oh boy.
And there's a so then you start getting this feeling like, how come I'm not with them?
Yeah.
And but it's also another level of tracking.
Yeah.
Which is that Snap map thing, dude. I don't have my location on there. She doesn't have hers, but like when you go on it, you can see everybody. And it's like, well, this is wild. Like, I know you're at home.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I know.
Like, and I don't think kids really fully grasp that.
Yeah.
And parents too. And if they don't know their kids on Snapchat, they don't know that anybody can pick up the phone and go, well, where is Brian? You know?
Yeah. So socially, that's a problem too, because then you're constantly creating this anxiety in our kids going, well, am I being left out?
Yeah.
What's going on? But yeah, definitely concerning to be able to see where people are at all times. It's again, for parents, I think it's great to be able to know where your kids are at, but for other people.
Do you see your boys being really active athletically and stuff like that?
My boys are both very different, so I mean, obviously, I hope for that, right? And we're doing everything we can to but kids are going to be their own people, and they all develop their own interests. And obviously, our biggest goal is supporting our kids no matter what they determine is what they want to do. But obviously, our hope is seeing us be active and taking care of ourselves. That rubs off on them. And I think there is, I don't know about the research, but I think there's something to be said for watching what your parents do. And, I can say right now that a lot of the reason I am who I am as a person is from watching the example that my parents set. And again, I'm one of the luckiest guys I know just because of the example I did have with my parents and the way they raised us and who they are as people, how hard they worked. I've talked about all that before, I think the last time I was on here. But, I think that's our general hope is that they are active and they, take care of themselves.
So your job obviously is so demanding.
Yeah.
And if they're both active and they're both doing things, like how do you think you're going to ensure that you're there?
Yeah. Well, it's difficult, and the hard part with my job is there's positives and negatives, just like everything. I get a little bit of flexibility, so if I need to cut out a little bit early, I can do that. Obviously, I make up for that in a lot of different things, late night meetings. I think the most important thing for me is making sure I carve out time for them. And again, when I'm home, trying to be as present as possible. And we go back to the cell phones. Like it's hard for me to imagine people doing this job without cell phones. Because something big could happen right now, and I have immediate notification like, hey, this is going on. I can get right on it if I need to. Back in the day, we didn't have that, so it's just different. But when I am home, trying to be as present as possible, and my wife will keep me in check once in a while. I'll be like, hey, you've been on your phone a lot, So again, that's just part of our relationship and our partnership that we have with each other to, remind each other, hey, let's focus on what's important right now and do that. So, again, this job is tough because things happen, and I have to be there for some of those things. So that could change at a moment's notice. It could happen right now, and I might have to just leave in the middle of this. Yeah. So you're constantly working on that. Anything could happen at any time, but just focusing on where you're at in the moment, I think, is the most important thing. Last night, I looked at my wife. Kai was already in bed, and we were reading a book to Dean, and he has this thing now where he likes to, when you rub his back. Yeah. So we're laying in bed, and so he will go on the most elaborate story you've ever heard of in your life before we shut the light off and put him to bed, just to kind of extend that time so he doesn't have to go to bed yet. Yeah. And I looked at my wife. I'm like, I really I'm trying to create a core memory here and just remember this moment because it's just it's such a cool feeling to watch him. You see the process going on in his mind where he's trying to extend it and saying the same things over and over again. Just so you see the wheels turning, and it's just such a cool moment. As a father, and to see your kids growing up and. To try to soak in those little moments.
It's also incredibly sad sometimes.
Yeah.
My youngest is 9, and sometimes I'm talking to her, and there's these movements where she's still super young, and then she's a lot older than 9.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, if we could just slow this shit down for a little bit, because the mortality in you too is this is the last one we're having, and I don't want these moments to go away.
Yeah.
And it also makes me feel incredibly old. The older she gets,
the
older my older two get. It's like, man, I wish I could bottle this and just every now and then just open it up like smelling salts.
Well, the great thing, and going back to cell phones again, the great thing about that is we do a lot of stuff just between my wife and I with the kids with Snapchat. And so then every year on that date, when your memories pop up, we're constantly resharing videos from when our kids were younger, and you forget about some of that stuff. So like with my parents, I have a photo album of the pictures they took. But to be able to relive some of those moments that you're able to catch on video is a really cool thing. And as far as like the memories, I remember so my older boy, when you get him out of the bathtub, he always wants you to carry him to bed, right? Carry me in the bedroom.
Yep.
And then one day I'm like, buddy, I'm doing this. Just walk yourself in the bedroom. My wife goes, someday it's going to be the last day that you've seen this meme or whatever posted on it. Someday it's going to be the last day that you carry him to his bedroom. And so then every time I get him out of the bath, I'm like, you know what? If he wants me to do that, like someday he's not going to want me to do that. So taking advantage of those little things too is something we really try to focus on.
Yeah, I still carry my daughter to bed too.
Yeah.
And that's and she's heavy.
Well,
and she's on the top bunk.
Oh no! So my 2-year-old weighs as much as my 6-year-old. Very different kids. He's a tank. So it's very, very different children, but it's one of those things that you know what? Yeah, let me take a minute. I'll carry him to bed because some days he's not gonna want me to do that. So,
aside from the gym, are you doing anything else like sauna, cold plunge, bro stuff?
So
we're getting a sauna.
So my wife nominated me to fly with the Blue Angels, and that happened.
Which was awesome, dude. That was some fucking Captain America shit.
I always say, aside from marrying my wife and having my kids, it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. Super bucket list item for me. So I'm on this constant quest. Like, how do you repay that, right? Like the one dream you had since you were a kid. Your wife helped make that happen. So she has suggested a sauna. She really wants that, so I would guess this summer, once the snow goes and we are able to make the spot that we want to put it, we'll probably get a sauna. I don't do the cold plunge. Well, we have red light therapy light at our house that we've used, but aside from that, no,
Yeah, we're gonna get a sauna, but see, we're between. We're definitely not staying where we're at.
Yeah.
So. But like when you look at like the cost to build versus, but then finding a place that kind of fits everything you're kind of looking for, it's still not. It's still going to come with some issues.
No
not
doubt.
That a fresh build isn't going to have its issues eventually, but it's just and then finding because everything's like $1 million right now.
Yeah.
And it's like okay, but I don't know. So we're constantly talking about it. We're gonna get one. Mm-hmm. It's just if we put it here. So I've talked to my buddy Cody. Shout out to Cody Watson. Has got one at his place, and at his place now is a I guess kind of like an electric one. Mm-hmm. He's going and it fires
infrared,
up.
Yeah.
And at his old house, he had the steam, the rocks. And he goes, dude, it was so awesome.
Yeah.
But when he was selling that house and buying this other one, it already had the sauna. So he was like, the guy that bought his house was like, I'll keep the sauna, So he left it there and he regrets it every day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because that's the one I want. So I'm like, how hard is it to transport, I guess? And he's like, well, as long as you got somebody with a pretty good size forklift, you can get it on a trailer and move it. And I'm like, all right, so maybe we'll get one.
Yeah.
But just the hassle of having to move it, because I really like to be at like the last place before I go into the old folks' home.
Yeah, yeah.
And that for me, like I'm getting to a point where I don't know how. This is a question that I wanted to ask is, you're a really good conversationalist. You're really good at speaking to people. You're really good at public speaking. But how do you feel being around a bunch of people? And I ask that question is because the more and more I want to be further and further away from the city, and not because I don't like it, but because I want a little bit more solitude.
Yeah.
I want a little bit more freedom around my property, and I want. It sounds weird, but after the situation that went down the other day, I told Betsy, I'm like, we're just too close to some of this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
I get a bunch of. That's why I don't mess with comments. I don't reply to comments.
I don't either.
get a bunch of that bullshit, and I know you guys do too. And I'm like, but something that one hit a little close to home, and I was like, I don't post pictures of my kids anymore online. I haven't done that in a while, which sucks because on like my personal pages is where I kind of interact with all family and friends and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, because that's how you do it today.
Yeah.
Nobody mails a picture,
Right.
And
I still get quite a few Christmas cards, but
yeah, like how do you parse that? How does that mentally? How do you work through that?
Yeah. So I'm not gonna tell you where I live, but
Yeah, no.
we live, we live close to town, but in the woods.
Yeah.
So at home, it's really a safe haven for us. It's quiet. For the most part, we have great neighbors. And so being able to come to that every night is really, I lived in the city, and there's nothing against living in the city. Everybody has their stuff, and the services that you receive in the city are fantastic. So everybody has their own outlook on where they want to live. But for me, I grew up on US 31. So,
yeah, dude.
I wanted to be able to have, and again, this is not to say anything bad about my childhood. It was fantastic, but I wanted my kids, my kids can play outside, and without me having to worry about, a car losing control on the highway and crashing into our front yard or something like that. So that's good. As far as people go, I love interacting with people. I was never a great public speaker, and then I started teaching my active shooter training, and that repetitive experience in talking to people really helped me with the way I am now. I think it's a lost art, and it goes back to how to keep bringing cell phones back again, but one of the hardest things we have to deal with young police officers is being able to talk to people, because that doesn't happen nearly as much as it used to, right? Young people are texting pretty much everything that they do. And so the ability to not just talk to people but to walk up to somebody you've never met before and engage in a conversation, it's an art. And it takes practice. And I think that is a skill set that is not as sharp with young people today as some of the older generation who didn't grow up just texting everything that they wanted. At least they were talking on the phone, right? You had to engage in that conversation. So it's a lost art that we have to do a lot of training on to get people comfortable with, especially people that they'd never met before. But I love interacting with people. I enjoy my alone time, my family time as well. But it's almost exhilarating for me now, and it's especially if it's people that maybe necessarily don't even think the way I do, because in this position as an elected official, there's a lot of opinions.
Yes.
And a lot of people that don't necessarily agree with some of the things you do or some of the things you say, obviously. But I like engaging with those people. Like, I've seen things written about me by people that have never met me, that have never sat down to talk to me, and that is super frustrating for me as a person. If we sit down and we have a conversation and we agree to disagree at the end, that's fine. But if you make judgments about me or say things about me without ever speaking to me, and again, I'm an elected official who believes very strongly in talking to people. So if you call my office, I might not get back to you today, I might not get back to you tomorrow because of my schedule, but I'll eventually get back to you and we can have a conversation. I just don't like hearing things said about me when you've never even reached out to pick my brain or have a conversation with me. And I think at the end of the day, whether it's law enforcement in general or in my position, people forget you're a human being as well. Like,
right.
I have kids. There's TV shows I like to watch. There's, you know what I mean? We do all the normal stuff that normal people do every day. And I think that gets kind of lost, that human aspect of we're just out here trying to live our lives and raise our families and have a peaceful life is kind of lost sometimes.
Yeah, that brings us back to just being able to fire off whatever you want on social media. And
yeah.
It's weird. So when I made the decision to stop, like, getting into the comments and stuff like that, because at first, when I first started this whole thing, was I want to build community, I want to interact, but the ones that just come through, it's like, what? Like, you're calling me a what? Like, you don't
Yeah.
even know me. And then it would kind of live in my head for a while.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I finally just had to be like, listen, that's not who you are. So it's just
Yeah, obviously if I have friends that'll say something, well, we can banter a little bit, but I don't play into that. That's what a lot of people want. They want to engage in that argument, whatever that is psychologically that stimulates people to want to do that. That's not who I am. And again, I read things, and one of sometimes my downfalls, I want to be liked. Like that's
same.
and
I think we all do.
yeah, and I think I've met some people I don't really think they care much, to be honest with you. But that can be a downfall sometimes in a position like this, because you can't make everybody happy. You know,
Right.
there's always going to be people who don't like what you do or how you do it. And my thing is, as long as I feel like I'm doing what's best to serve the community, and I'm talking on the professional side here, so responding to those comments is not something I'm, one, going to give the satisfaction of somebody of feeding into what they're saying, and two, a lot of times they've never met me, so
Right.
even if we try to have a conversation over Facebook, it's not a way to do it. It's the same way with emails. As somebody who runs an organization, things happen where sometimes staff are upset or people are upset. And instead of exchanging emails back and forth, I'd rather be like, hey, let's just come into my office and let's talk about it. Because I feel like you can add your own bias to what people are saying. You can add emphasis on different parts or different words that
Especially
can
when
really
you're reading a
change.
text, you're like, what?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I like verbal communication and being able to see body language and being able to interact with people rather than just doing it through a screen.
There's a story about Benjamin Franklin, who, because back then they were writing letters.
Oh, yeah.
And he would do, like, if he got a letter from whoever and it was kind of like an upsetting letter, he would write 2 or 3 letters back that were like vicious, like, I'm coming back at you, and then he would let it sit for a night and then come back, throw them all away, and just write a very polite response, like he got it out of his system. And when I heard that, this was some years ago, I do that now.
So do I.
Whether it's a text message or an email, I'll just be like, pray to God I don't actually send it, and then be like, okay, now you've said what you wanted to say, feels pretty good, now let's do the right one. Be the better person.
I don't necessarily write it out, but I always give myself time, because I can be an emotional person too, and I think one of the most important things when you get into a role like this, or any type of role where you're leading people, managing people, is to understand yourself. And I think some people skip that step. We all have this notion in our minds of who we are and how people see us and that sort of thing, and that it's not always accurate. So, what I always tell my staff is like, hey, if I make a decision or do something you don't like, I want to hear that from you. At the end of the day, it might not change my mind, and we might still go the direction that we're going, but I need to hear that. And sometimes it's hard to hear things about yourself or things being said and not get emotional. So again, I just take that time. Like, I don't respond right away. I let myself digest it, think about it. Because early in my career, I did fall into that trap where you fire something off, and then it takes a situation that wasn't great, and it just multiplies it and makes everybody angry, and it just it's not conducive to a harmonious path forward for everybody. So yeah, it's a great lesson to learn.
In the last podcast that you and I did, I asked this question, and because I do say this to people a lot. I say, Brian would be a phenomenal senator or congressman. No. And I know you love your job. I know you love protecting and serving the county. But you don't see yourself moving politically anywhere else.
I don't.
In the future.
I don't. To be honest, this is not a spot I ever thought I'd be in the first place. But I love the sheriff's office, and I love what it stands for. I love its role in the community. And one of the things I always tell people, because I'm always asking myself, like, what are your goals? Like, we're going to, at some point I'm going to be gone. The undersheriff's going to be gone. We're going to need people to step up and want to lead in this organization. And I always say that everybody has their own opinions on what they think could be done better or
Sure.
things that could be done different. And the only way that you can make those changes is to put yourself in a position to be able to do it. And the only way you can do that is by stepping up. And so for me, I am really happy with where I'm at. I can't retire till August 1st, 2034, which means, the voters willing that I have to win at least 2 more elections before I could retire. I'll have an 11-year-old, so what that looks like in 34, I don't know, but I'll be 50. I don't see that in my future. I don't have any aspirations for that. And I think part of it goes back to what I talked to about the world that we live in. We used to be able to talk about stuff and maybe not agree at the end, but at least be able to have civil conversations. And I feel like civil conversations are not something that you see a whole lot of anymore.
No, it's weird. I'm going to have John Helge on the podcast in March. We landed on a date, and I'm trying to get somebody from the GOP to come on because I really want the contrast,
Mm-hmm.
But, I'm going to kind of steel man him a little bit, and I would do that for the GOP as well. But I think the big thing is when you talk about divides, like that's the big one.
It is.
Like when you talk about wanting to have a conversation with somebody, no matter what side of the line you're on, what team you root for, and I think it's rabid on both sides. It's like watching a fucking soccer match in Europe. There is no common ground. There is no middle ground, and it's wild to see. I see it play out on Facebook, which I don't play around on Facebook anymore, dude. I can't. Like I'd go on there to check in. I have to go on there because of the races or whatever, or the podcast, and put stuff up. But it's like you open it up, and all it is like one side calling the other side.
Yeah.
And that is wild to me, bro.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't my first election.
Right. Right.
And to your point, like you can't have a conversation because it's like if you're one side, you're, whatever, you're crazy. You're this side, you're crazy, and there's no in between.
Yeah. I just spoke. The Manistee County Democrats invited me in to talk about some different things, and it was a great conversation. I led that off with, I'm a conservative person. I'm a Republican sheriff. But that I'm also a person.
Yeah.
Right. And that person wants what's best for the community. I'm not looking out for what's best for half the community or the half that voted for me. And it's a tough spot to be in sometimes, because some people want you to do more this way or do more that way. I can't make everybody happy, so I'm just here trying to do the best thing that I can.
And also, I don't think law
community.
enforcement needs to pick a side.
Well, and there has been discussion about legislation to make this a nonpartisan position. I don't oppose that, because I think you do need to have the trust of the entire community.
Right.
That you're not focusing on what's best for one group. You're focusing on what's best to protect. People always ask me, well, like, what are your goals? My goal is to provide, as the sheriff, is to provide the best law enforcement service we can for everybody in the community and keep everybody safe, whether you live here, you work here, you visit. And in the jail, it's providing, the safest environment we can for those in our community that find themselves incarcerated. Nobody wants to be there, but I feel like when we are there, we need to treat them with respect. Our inspectors from DOC consistently tell us we have one of the cleanest jails in the state of Michigan. Incredibly proud of that, because I think those people deserve, the people that find themselves incarcerated need that support. And again, some of the initiatives are trying to break some of the cycle of that too with our MAP program and some of that stuff. And I'm not trying to get into work here, but we kind of stumbled down that path.
Yeah,
so.
It happens. So one thing, just kind of circle back to the whole working out thing. You said it's like 4 or 5 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I guess, like, other than just health and being fit, are there any particular goals you're trying to achieve? Is there a certain look, size, feel? Is there anything more than just what you're doing? Betsy, I just forget to ask those questions, because like one of them, she's like, because I'm training for an Ironman.
Yeah.
And that dude, this is the last one. I'm not doing anything like this again.
Well, kudos to you. That's hard.
And and right now it's just kind of like baby steps. Like I'm just kind of slowly doing everything, but like I got to be active every single day.
Yeah.
So it's like I worked out this morning. When we're done with this, I got another workout I got to do this afternoon, and it's like, so I have a thing. Like before it was just races. I'd be running, so I would just 5 times a week or whatever get my miles in and be done. Now it's just like, and I'm trying to lift on top of this.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be some little skinny bastard, you know what I mean?
Right.
Which is super hard, which is why, I'm like, I need to upgrade up the protein, make sure everything's feeling good. It's just trying to stay optimized. But I guess I'm just wondering, like, is there a goal for you? Is there?
Everybody does it for their own reasons. My wife, she did a bodybuilding show, and then she went into powerlifting, and so obviously the goal there is always striving for that next meet, and beating your numbers. I think it's fun to be strong.
Yeah, me too.
And so, when you can bench press 350 pounds, it's a really good feeling to be able to do that.
How are your shoulders?
What's that?
I know you do a lot of like Olympic style lifts and stuff like that, and you're doing like, I haven't done a bench.
Yeah.
It's like the legitimate bar bench in a few years. I mean, my shoulders are just absolute garbage.
Yeah.
So I'll do just dumbbells.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's no, there are some things that you probably don't want to do, but there are, everybody has their own stuff. When you have injuries or you have different parts of your body that aren't as strong. I tore my rotator cuff in high school, and that was always something that I remember dropping a dumbbell when I was at Dave's gym there over in the old Kmart Plaza because my shoulder gave out, but I've been able to build that strength back. But as far as goals, my wife is always focusing on, that's something that she needs.
Yeah.
For me, I do it more for stress relief and just to feel good about myself. So I'm not doing it to see some of those things happen is kind of cool, when you can see body composition change, or you can see, you put a shirt on that you haven't worn in a while and you're like, oh man, that fits nice, that's always a good feeling. But for me, it's really the stress relief and doing something for myself that I really am just pushing for. So just to feel good every day.
What does a rest day look like? That was one of Betsy's questions.
A rest day?
Yeah, because for me, like especially now that I've been training like this, I'm not really taking a rest day, but I can remember when, I wasn't going so all in, that sometimes a rest day would feel almost a little mentally challenging for me. I feel like I'm going backwards, and it's only been 12 hours.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really important, though. You have to give your body some time to recuperate. And the other thing that most people are really lacking in is sleep. You should be getting 8 hours of sleep if you can, 7 to 8 hours every single night. And again, with screens and people spending time on their phones, and I feel like it's really easy to get lost in that scrolling and that whatever you're doing. People just aren't getting enough sleep. I talk to people who are like, I get 3 to 4 hours a night. And your body can't, especially if you're working out and you're trying to get stronger, you really need to give your body that rest. My rest days are nothing special, to be completely honest with you. If it's a weekday, I go to work. I come home, I play with my kids. My kids are sleep trained, so they go to bed. Kai's in bed at 7 o'clock every night. Dean's in bed by 7:30. And then so from 7:30 until 10, my wife usually falls asleep a little bit before that, but we get that time, for us, which I think is really important too, So whether it's watching a TV show we want to watch or whatever that is just relaxing and spending time together, that's, I think, something that's really important too. And it's not sitting here, a lot of times we're watching TV or whatever, but it's not sitting with each other on our phones, scrolling through our phones for 3 hours before we go to bed, So, and I think that's something that is a difficult thing for some people too.
The last question she wanted, which I like, if you were starting over, how might you do things differently in terms of like health and fitness? From like where you are today, but from maybe before you really got into it with your wife.
I wish I would have taken a little more time to educate myself, because I feel like a lot of people get their information from social media or, the newest fad, which is like, I lost 60 pounds, no exercise required, but they don't tell you that it's going to cost you $500 a month, and they're going to drop you down to 1,200 calories a day, which is not healthy to do that. So I wish I would have taken a little more time to just educate myself on taking care of my body. And again, that was all spurred by somebody else in my life who had taken that initiative to educate me. But I think if I were to do it all over again, I obviously wish I would have started a lot earlier in life. It's back in the day.
That's such a personal thing.
Yeah.
It really is. Because I tell people all the time, why don't you just do this? Well, it's not. What I say isn't going to get them to change.
Right.
They have to be like, okay, maybe I need to start taking a little bit more accountability on my health.
Well, when you're young, too, you don't see, you lose people, right? And people pass away, whatever. But I think the older I get, I can't tell you how many funerals I've been to this year. And every time I go to a funeral, it impacts me. And I think about my kids, my wife, and the fact that I enjoy life. I really would like to continue that as long as I possibly can. Yeah. And so I think a lot of it is perspective with age too. Because when you're a kid, I always laugh at some of the young people. They eat McDonald's every day or 2 pounds of wings from, whatever, and they don't gain any weight. But as you get a bit older and your body starts to change, that stuff impacts you more. So when you're young, it's like, I'm always going to be healthy because this is the way I've been for, 20, 21 years, 25 years, whatever it is. And then one day, I'll never forget it. It was when I was on the drug team and I gained all that weight. I looked at a picture of myself because you see yourself
usually
every day.
That's when it.
Yeah, you see yourself in the mirror every day and you're like, that's me. It's the same. And then I looked at a picture and I'm like, we have a filter on? Did something distort it? No, that's who I was. And so, not there's anything wrong with that, but it just wasn't what I wanted for myself.
Yeah,
so,
usually when you see a picture like that of yourself, you can see that you're not healthy.
Yeah.
It affects everything.
Yeah.
Stress, mood, everything. Real quick, you were talking about when you said 1,200 calories isn't enough, and I agree with you. It's not. When you meal plan, are you tracking your caloric intake, how much is optimal for you?
I'm not that stringent on it. I don't like when my wife talks to people that she works with, she will have them write down, use a fitness tracker where you write down every single thing that you take in that day. And there's a lot of stuff people don't really think much about, like your coffee creamer, right? So you put creamer in your coffee. If you've ever read the back of that label, it's
not much, and it's a lot of calories.
Yeah, and it's saying a serving's like a tablespoon.
Yeah.
I used to put a lot more in a tablespoon in my coffee. So now we do Fairlife triple filtered milk with a pack of stevia and some of that skinny syrup, just to which is way better than your coffee creamer and has more protein. But so that's one of the things she does is, hey, let's look at everything you're intaking, and then we'll try to make some tweaks and look at that stuff. For me, I'm not that stringent on it. My biggest thing is trying to get as much protein in as I can a day. So, the recommendation is to try to get a gram for every pound of body weight that you have. So, which is hard. If you've ever tried to eat 200 grams of protein in a day, 212 grams of protein, whatever it is, you're not going to be hungry. No. In fact, you're not going to want to eat anything else. So, really, that's what I focus on. And again, if I was doing a show or a competition or something, I might be more stringent on that. But I just want to feel good. So
how does that? Just a real quick touch on the department. How does this kind of translate into the team? Yeah. I'd be interested to know if anybody are picking your brain or kind of moving the needle a little bit there.
Yeah, one of my staff was just in there yesterday talking to me about stuff. I'm a huge proponent of trying to get our people active. We sit in the car a lot. Yeah. And it's not good for you, but again, you have to there's got to be some sort of desire in yourself. You can tell people till they're blue in the face to do things differently, and it's the same thing with smoking or drinking or whatever the case may be. If somebody doesn't have some sort of desire, because it's a lot of personal accountability, and it's it's decisions that you have to make when nobody else is watching, right? I'm not always the best with that. When it comes to food, everything else, I'm pretty good. But again, if somebody brings in a box of donuts to the office, that's really hard. That's a test for me. And I don't always pass it. But you have to be able to enjoy little things as well occasionally, and I think that's why I don't get so hung up on it. And again, I'm not doing a show, so there's no reason for me to be, 3% body fat and that stuff. I'm just trying to be comfortable and enjoy my life, but be around for my kids. So that's my main goal.
I think that's perfect. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, of course, man. I appreciate it.